For the next few minutes, let's take a 35,000-foot view of what the mindfulness endeavor is really all about. Having personally experienced each of the stages I'm going to describe, I think it's important to lay out what this path actually entails. First of all, none of this is based on belief. The point of sitting, especially in the beginning, is not to adopt a philosophy, but to learn how to clearly see how experience continuously unfolds in real time. This isn't about building a library of concepts. It's about first-hand discovery. So let's explore the typical progression most people go through on their way to a radical shift in awareness, what some call non-dual awareness, or the Buddha mind. As we walk through the stages, I invite you to consider where you might be in this process. And at the end, I'll offer a cue, a litmus test, for recognizing whether that final shift has occurred. Stage 1. I'm in here, looking out. For most people, life begins with a simple, intuitive assumption. I'm in here, looking out at the world. We feel located behind the eyes. Our center of gravity is somewhere in the head, watching an external world that seems to surround the body. Many would say our self, or even soul, resides behind the face. We may not articulate it that way, or even question it, but most people operate from this felt sense of me, situated behind the eyes. Everything, sights, sounds, sensations, thoughts, is assumed to be happening to this me. Thoughts? Clearly happening over here. Sounds and sights? Obviously out there. And so the subject-object divide is born, deep, unquestioned, and invisible to most. Stage 2. I can observe my thoughts. With mindfulness practice, something begins to shift. We start to notice what's happening in the mind, not conceptually, but directly. We watch thoughts come and go. We observe emotions rise and pass. We feel tension in the body, sense it as a kind of energetic event, and then watch it dissipate. There's still a sense of being a subject, a witness, someone watching all of this unfold. But the grip loosens. Instead of, I'm angry, we say, that's the feeling of anger, and I'm aware of it. This is powerful. And yet, the sense of a subject, of someone on the edge of experience, remains. There's now distance from the content, but not yet a shift in identity or how experience is known. Thoughts and feelings are no longer seen as me, but as things happening to me. Stage 3. Thoughts have no thinker. At a certain point, deeper concentration can lead to a striking realization. Thoughts appear, but no thinker can be found next to them, generating them. They just show up, like internal sounds, loud or subtle, unpredictable. They pass through like weather. No one is authoring them. No one is behind the curtain. For some, this can result in a curiousness in the question, what actually is going on here? We begin to recognize that much of what we assumed was me is just mental activity, happening in the same way clouds pass through the sky. Still, even here, a faint observer usually remains. There's often still a me, watching from a distance, trying to stay present, frustrated by distraction, and wishing the mind were quieter. This is where many people spend their entire mindfulness practice, watching breath, noticing thoughts, but still having a persistent feeling of being on the edge of the mindfulness session. Stage 4. The field is what I am. For a few minds that really like to pull on threads, this next phase is driven by a deep questioning. What actually is going on here? The findings through mindfulness so far have been so surprising that maybe some of the endpoints that are described might actually be worth exploring further. What is this whole field of experience? What is non-dual awareness? What is the Buddha mind? Not as concepts, but as experienced. Is there a there? Instead of chasing individual thoughts or emotions, the focus begins to shift toward the field itself, the medium in which everything is happening. Sight, sound, thought, sensation, it's all appearing in this unified field. In some way, the visual field becomes more intimately known. Not anything inhabiting it, but the field that is holding the passing information. There may be moments, brief but undeniable, when the sense of being a subject on the edge drops away. Paradoxically, there is a more content flow of experience, sometimes only recognized after contracting back around the sense of the subject, peering in. For that previous moment, you were not in here, looking out at experience. In some subtle way, you were the field. This is fleeting. The contraction around me creeps back in quickly. But now the seed has been planted. You've seen something that changes the entire game. Stage 5. I am the field. From here, practice becomes about shedding the illusion that results in contraction, and with further mindfulness, the lengthening of those moments. Stabilization. Repetition. Letting the mind, in some way, learn over and over that it is this entire field of experience, not limited to a contracted sense on the edge of it. There wasn't a subject behind the face the whole time. But the moments of the day that get stuck, identified in that space, will sway towards unnecessary suffering. Thoughts synergistically couple with that contraction. There's less space between the two. But when the other mode of flowing through the day becomes more familiar, the thoughts, the face, the inner voice, they all appear in the field and are known as a smaller part of the whole field that makes up us. And here is the cue, the litmus test for recognizing whether the shift has occurred. Right now, if your eyes are open, let the visual field simply appear. Now ask yourself, is there a sense of looking at this scene? Of being, in some way, on the edge of it? If so, that posture of the mind is important to recognize. No need to pretend otherwise. But now, without moving your eyes, look toward the edges of the visual field, where the image begins to fade. Hold this statement in your awareness. The edges of the visual field, right there, are the boundary of awareness. Not because awareness can't add to that fading out, but because those edges represent the full extent of what's being consciously modeled right now. Any sense of objects beyond that? Maybe some information is bubbling up. My bedroom is in the next room. Or, I feel the back of my head. Or, there are obviously stars above the ceiling. But notice, those are thoughts. And while thoughts can be known, they are not part of this immediate field. unless they appear within it. In the moment when this is realized, not just conceptually, but directly, something can shift. Experience can move slightly forward, very subtly. You're no longer someone watching the visual field, no longer peering in from the edge. A characteristic intrinsic to the shift is this: as the flow of experience, it is known that where you end is where the visual field begins to fade. The visual field is not something you're looking at. It is a characteristic of you. You are the field, knowing itself. This is a critical insight. Where you end is not behind the eyes. It's where the edges of the visual field dissolve. And if it's early in the day, and some residual tiredness is still present, that tiredness is known as permeating throughout the whole field, throughout what you are. Tiredness is recognized as coloring the visual field. They're coupled, not separate. But when the shift occurs, tiredness is no longer seen as a problem, or even as tiredness. It becomes simply an energy texture to the moment. Something else is intrinsic to the shift, something rarely discussed but worth stating clearly. When the shift occurs, if there were anything in experience that resembled a bliss meter, the reading would be a solid 51 out of 100. Non-dual awareness is not synonymous with bliss. It's not a 100 out of 100, and anyone who suggests that it is likely hasn't experienced the shift. Here's the paradox. The dualistic state of mind constantly chases moments where the bliss meter spikes near 100. But in reality, that same mind is typically running at a 4 to 7. To flow through the day at a solid 51 is a superpower. It's a completely different way of living. Experience content in the unfolding moments, not living in the desire of being in a different place or a future time or circumstance. A fundamentally different experience. Quiet, free, and clear. This shift isn't something to believe in. It's something to notice. Until that recognition becomes stable, let mindfulness help you explore the edges of thought, of sensation, of sight, and sound. Exploration in mindfulness is not to achieve a future state in another life, but to clarify what is already unfolding right now. Because when the contraction around the sense of being this ingrained, separate self dissolves, experience flows differently. Thoughts and emotions arise and pass like weather, not denied, but no longer taken personally. And the mind, paradoxically, becomes more skillful at navigating life, not by control, but by clarity. That is the Buddha mind. So yes, put in the time, sharpen the microscope of awareness, but don't just focus on the breath. Turn that microscope of attention around on what is looking. See what constitutes that sense. And maybe the microscope will reveal what doesn't. Thanks for exploring.